Islam, Monarch.
Islam, sir.
My question today is, what's the best benefits that Moors can get out of the Amexem-Moor-Empire? Because a lot of Moors are seeking light and they need guidance because there's a lot of Moors that's lost out there and they're looking for pieces of the puzzle and they can't usually find all the pieces that they're looking for. So what can you say, what pieces of the puzzle they can expect to find, or that they should find, at least if they're looking for something that is at least close to, or at least that is that something that it might be equal to the Amexem-Moor-Empire?
Hmm. I can address that from the government perspective. The Amexem-Moor-Empire deals in the Moors paradigm from the government perspective. You have various houses that deal in different things. You have religious bodies, schools of astrology, civic associations. You have trust situations like the Divine Trust I heard about recently. You have everyone that has a role to play. Some folks bring the spiritual component, some bring the religious component, some bring the benefits of knowing how to deal with astrology. Some of them deal with, I guess, social aspects. But when it comes down to government structure, you have to know what you're doing when it comes to the government structure. You have to know what various types of government structures there are, how they're formed, why they're formed. Those are the things that the Mexican Empire deals in. My government structure, my imperial government constitutes 12 departments and 39 sub-departments, and they're there for the purpose of providing our folks with a wide variety of services of, by, and for the Moors on our own steam. That way, we are answerable directly to our folks. That way, our folks are provided with things from their perspective, from folks who think, act, and speak as they do. Now, we don't get into the various things I mentioned previously in terms of them being the central focus. Of course, all of those items that I mentioned, they have bearing. They all have a role to play in what we do in our daily lives. But when it comes down to discourse, whether it be international or intra-level, you have to have particular things in place to make sure everything runs smoothly, and which is what government does. Government is not meant to be obtrusive. It's not meant to be obtuse either. Government is meant to make sure that everything in society is meted out equally. It's designed so that everyone is provided with access to whatever is needed for them to reach their full potential.
Along the lines like Prophet Confucius was speaking, man and government working hand in hand.
Aye. Well, obviously they have to work hand in hand. There is no getting around that. The only question is, what is the government doing and what value does it bring? Because if it's not doing what it's supposed to and by default not bringing forth any value, then it becomes a pariah. And what has happened over the years, over the centuries, over thousands of years, is most of the times when you've had government structure, they were predicated upon the idea of greed. They were predicated upon the idea of someone's agenda that was not all-inclusive. So you have to take time to study these things, see what mistakes were made, why they were made, as well as how they were made, so that you make sure you can put things in place that allow you to have the ability to not make those same mistakes again. Now, you're not always going to be perfect. You're not always going to get it right. I'm speaking about in general. So, when the Amexem-Moor-Empire was formed, and when I wrote the Amexem-Moor-Empire Constitution and created the government structure that we have, I took into account a wide variety of things that happened over time. And I inculcated spiritual discipline, psychology, various philosophies, basically taken liberal arts and ran through all those things and extracted what was most important in my eyes at the time to use as the starting blocks, building blocks, if you would, for a nation that would be viable with a responsible government structure. Now, there are those who don't agree with particular things that the Amexem-Moor-Empire does, and that's their right. I don't get into all the sidebar stuff that folks get into. I don't get into the issues in general because my central focus is the 12 departments and 39 sub-departments I make available to those who are interested in what we make available. What we provide for folks is a means for them to have a system of learning, system of health, and to be able to engage in trade because we have commercial abilities. And where they have disagreements, we have a court of the original jurisdiction. And our court for the original jurisdiction is available to any body of Moors who wants to use it. For example, if there's a group of Moors out there who's having an internal dispute and they're looking for an independent voice, an independent mindset to take a look at what their dispute is, well, they can come into the Amexem-Moor-Empire Imperial Court and make use of the Imperial Court. And if they're from a foreign jurisdiction and don't want to use the published rules from the Amexem-Moor-Empire Imperial Court system, that's fine. They can come into the Amexem-Moor-Empire Imperial Court and bring their published rules. And Al-Akam, our judge, will sit on that particular case. And they will hear the arguments and the counter-arguments. We have a wide variety of things that we make available, not only to our nationals, but to all of the Moors, whether they be from the Amexem-Moor-Empire or not. You can come from the NOI, you can come from any body of color. We view them as Moors, and they have access to our services. So, in terms of value that we bring, I think it's fair to say that we have a track record that supports the fact that we do bring value because of our functioning government structures and our expanding institutions. Now, honestly, in short form, that's probably the best way I know how to answer that particular question, because what you asked, although it's an excellent question, it requires a very large amount of explanation in a wide variety of fields. So to keep it in short term, excuse me, and to be firm in my response, this is probably the best way I know how to do that. So perhaps in future times we can discuss other components of your question, and I can give you further detail. So with that, I want to say peace and love, and I thank you for the question.